Rahim, we want to just review Descartes' conception of intuition, and this is from one of my favorite Descartes scholar, John Cottingham. So let's look at it. So Descartes' account of human knowledge is indebted to a long philosophical tradition which draws comparison between mental cognition and ordinary ocular vision. So mental cognition is that's intellectual intuition, and ocular vision so there are two eyes of the mind versus the bodily eye. This is the same as what we saw last time. So there are two types of eyes. There is the eye of the mind and there is the eye of the body. And the eye of the mind, that the power of mental cognition, and the ordinary eye has the power of ocular vision. The notion goes back as far as Plato and plays a prominent role in the writing of Plotinus in Latin, and Augustine. Plotinus and Augustine are followers of Plato anyway. So Augustine puts the matter as follows. So this is quotation from Augustine. So what does Augustine says? The mind, when directed toward intelligible things. So the difference between mental eye, the eye of the mind, and the bodily eye is that the bodily eye can see physical things or material things. On the other hand, the eye of the mind that sees intelligible things only. So the mind, when directed towards intelligible things in the natural order, according to the disposition of the creator, sees them. So mind has an eye or capacities to see as well. So direct vision in a certain incorporeal light. So as our bodily eye needs a light, and that is the material light which is coming from the sun, there is a incorporeal light, that is non-material light, which is sui generis, that is unique. Just as the physical eyes sees nearby objects in corporeal light. So that this actually hits the nail in the head, in the sense that it really explains the basic difference in two traditions. So it's the whole notion of the mental eye versus the bodily eye. So according to Augustine, so you have bodily eye, mental eye, and they both have the power to see, but the objects are different. So material objects, intelligible object, or mental or rational object, like for example numbers. And so that's the difference, but the similarity is that this is direct knowledge. So we are seeing here material object directly, so there is no inference involved. And here we are seeing intelligible objects directly. The difference is that this is material object and this is intelligible. And to see material object, we need material eye. To see intelligible objects, we need immaterial or intellectual or intelligible eye. And to see the material objects through material eye or physiological eye or bodily eye, we need material light, like the light of the sun, for example. I think that's something which I don't know whether I just learned it or I hadn't paid attention to it, because a lot of this tradition talk about normal sunlight as if it is immaterial light. But here, at least Augustine is aware of that. For bodily eye, we need material light, that is, the light of the sun. That's how I'm understanding him here. And but to see the intelligible objects, we need immaterial light. I don't know what light that is, but maybe light of God for him. But there is immaterial, the conception of, at least implicit in here. No, actually, he explicitly says that, not just implicit. To the mind, when directed toward intelligible things in the natural order, according to the disposition of the Creator, sees them in a certain incorporeal light, non-material, which is sui generis. Just as the physical eye sees nearby objects incorporeal, so it's actually explicitly stated here, this contrast. I think that's interesting. Okay, so move on. This is the background which informs Descartes' use of the term. So the background, Platonic background, basically. Use of the term intuition, Latin Latin intuitus. The word being derived from the word intuere, which in classical Latin means simply to look or inspect or to see. His claim is that the mind, when freed from interference from sensory stimuli, his claim is that the mind, when freed from interference from sensory stimuli, has the innate power or the natural power. Innate just simply means natural or inborn power to see or directly apprehend, the truth which God has implanted within it. So that's a bit different from Platonic here. So that's already there's a turn towards subjectivism in Descartes here, which probably was there in Augustine too. I'm not sure, because in Plato, what you see is not within you, but it is in its own realm, external realm. And maybe your innate powers or your innate ideas actually help you to see that, but you are not actually looking inside. What you are looking at is at the world of form, or the immaterial or intelligible world. But here it seems that for Descartes, at least here in this way Cottingham is putting here, intuition is direct apprehension or seeing, but seeing, so you see, the mind eye sees the intelligible objects, but it's not in the external world, but within itself. So what it sees is really the truth, I guess, or maybe they are deposited there, I don't know. Okay, and here is the by intuition I do not mean the fluctuating That's Descartes' words. By intuition, I don't mean the fluctuating testimony of the senses. He didn't think that senses were very reliable, or the deceptive judgments of the imagination based on the sense perception as it watches things together, but the conception of clear and attentive mind. So mind attention is a very important concept in Descartes, because mind for him makes mistake only when in two ways mind makes mistake. For Descartes, mind is almost infallible, really. When it makes mistakes, firstly, if there is an interference from senses, for example. And since this mind is sort of caged within a body, there is always an interference. And it also makes a mistake when you don't pay enough attention, because attention makes sure that mind is working at its full capacity without interference from outside. Okay, so but the conception of a clear and attentive mind, which is so easy and distinct that there can be no room for doubt. So the pure so doubt is overcome through when mind works on its own without any attentively and without interference from outside, and that's why you can achieve absolute certainty. In that sense, mind for him, when it works on its own and it's in its natural conditions and it's according to its full nature, then it is actually infallible. That's why I understand. For which we are which is so easy and distinct that there can be no room or doubt about what we are understanding. Alternatively, and this comes to the same thing, intuition is the conception of a clear and attentive mind, which proceeds solely from the light of reason. So there is a light of reason here too. And I guess this light of reason is different from any material, devoid of any material. And this light is from within mind, I guess, because that's the word of reason for Descartes. So it's a bit different from Augustine, because light of reason for him might be coming from God, for example, or from other realms. But for Descartes, probably it's just coming from our own mind or the universal mind, which may be God itself too. So thus everyone can mentally intuit that he exists, that he is thinking, that a triangle is bounded by just three sides and sphere by a single surface and the like. That is the intelligible objects. Okay. In the reguli rules, that is rules of the direction of our native intelligence, from which this last quotation comes, intuition is put forward as the fundamental basis of all reliable knowledge. And although a finite mind will often be unable to see a whole series of interconnected, so there is a finite mind and there is an infinite mind, and I guess infinite mind is God for him, and that then Kant obviously takes from him as well as and universalizes it in a sense. So for Descartes, it seems like, I might be wrong. I mean, this is there's not mind. So this is clear. There's no doubt about this, that in Descartes, mind is of two types: infinite. Finite mind is human mind because it is limited by our bodies and material world. And that's why it makes mistake. Otherwise, it is infallible. Infinite mind, on the other hand, the mind not. So that probably is God for him. But for Kant, then uh, reason is something beyond God, in the sense that both God and man partake in reason. And that's why for Kant, God and man belong to the same community as, and in that sense are equal as far as they are mental existence or mental creatures, or as far as they are mind or reason. The only difference is, since God doesn't have body, he is a perfect mind. On the other hand, human, since they have a body, they are finite or imperfect mind. That's Kant. But this reason or mind, universal mind, is beyond God and man. On the other hand, as far as I understand, for Descartes, there's a man, finite, and then there is a God, infinite mind. So in rules for the direction from which this last quotation comes, intuition is put forward as the fundamental basis of all reliable knowledge. And although a finite mind will often be unable to see a whole series of interconnected truth at a single glance, the ideal remains that it should attempt to survey the series in a single and uninterrupted sweep of thought, so that the process of deduction is reduced as far as possible to direct intuition. Because in Descartes' conception of knowledge, knowledge is akin to building, for example. And so these are foundations. So foundations should be based on absolutely certain knowledge, and that would be direct mental mind, things which mind sees directly. And then from these you can deduce other truths through inference, and with the help of senses you can build on this. But this foundation should be based on direct seeing of mind. And since the human mind is finite and limited, that's why it can't see the whole thing directly. But probably God doesn't need inference at all, it just sees the whole thing directly. But for human mind too, the ideal is that, even though due to its limitation, this ideal get limited to foundational things, etc. I think probably it's a really interesting entry by John Cuttingham. I mean, he had a lot of information in there. So probably we shouldn't rush, and we'll finish this off in the next one or two sessions, inshallah.